So for for those people who don't know me, which is probably a lot because I'm relatively new. I've been in the chase for about a year. I am a lawyer here in Las Vegas. Before y'all decide I'm a bad person and hate me, I'm a corporate lawyer. I like to think I'm the good guy. I wear the white hat. So I should preface this by saying that please do not take anything that I say in this session as any type of legal advice, because I'm number one, I'm not your lawyer, and number two, I'm not that kind of lawyer to argue this type of case in court. So these are just my ruminations and my thoughts that I've had based on the things I've seen in my life and the kind of the special training that I've had by going through law school. And one of the things that I really loved when I was in law school was the study of contracts. Contract law was always my favorite.
Okay.
It's the thing about contract law that's neat is it's based on two parties agreeing to something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you leave out terms of the contract, generally the court will read in what's reasonable. So that seemed to make a lot of sense to me. And I was like, well, I could do that. So, here I am. As I look at the poem, one of the things that I noticed, and that I really haven't seen talked about very much, I saw it, I think it might have been mentioned very briefly in passing about a year or so ago on Dale's site, is that the poem itself could be a contract. And I know everyone's going to think I'm crazy.
Well, the last two stanzas kind of read that way, don't they?
Well, they do.
Yeah.
They do. There's been a lot of speculation by a lot of people about, well, how will they actually get the treasure legally? Do they have to call Forrest and, go with Forrest to get it? Will Forrest put it in some kind of trust and then transfer it to them? People have speculated maybe there's a deed in the chest.
The title to the gold, right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people have speculated that. I've read all different kinds of things. I know people have spent a lot of time talking about, well, maybe there would be gift tax, and what if it's a treasure trove? There are laws about, finding treasure trove. And I know Forrest uses the word trove, so everyone kind of keys in on that. But I want to talk about something that I think is kind of interesting that I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
So when Forrest says, in his many, many interviews and also at the end of the poem, Forrest always says, if you can find the chest, it's yours, right? He says people won't find it. You won't find it on accident. No one's just going to stumble across it.
Right.
You're going to have to be looking for it. And in the poem itself, he says that, if you're brave and in the wood, I give you title to the gold. And to me, that is a very strong and telling statement. I interpret that to mean that, and again, it's not legal advice. This is just what Lisa thinks. But I interpret that to mean that he has done something. He has set it up in such a way that the treasure will be yours when you find it. So there are a lot of laws that are, discuss like what happens if you find something. If you find something that somebody lost, you have to turn it in. Or, if you find treasure trove, how you have to report that and such. And people have said, well, the states are going to have a claim and, government may have a claim for whatever reason. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure that they will. And this will all go, be litigated after it's actually found. But I want to talk to you guys about a very special kind of contract.
Okay.
And to do that, I want to take you guys way back in history, and I'm going to see if I can share a screen with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So
At the bottom, there should be a button in the very middle on the bottom.
yeah.
Yeah. Just share screen.
Okay.
Hey, happy birthday, Larry. Larry Sandell, 70 years old today. All right, so we can see your windows. There we go. Carbolic smoke ball. What is that?
Yeah, I'm going to make that really big. And this is actually really on point for what is going on today. And I'm sorry, that is really, really not clear. But so this is a really famous case. So a lot of law students all across the country, we all read these same cases, and because they kind of teach us what the law is generally, and then you learn, more specific about a specific state. But so this harkens back to Old England.
Okay.
And it is one of the original cases where there was what's called a reward by publication. And so in this case, this carbolic smoke ball company, they manufactured this really nifty thing. I guess it was a smoke ball. And if you use the smoke ball, it was supposed to keep you from getting the flu, cold, coughs, etc. It protected you from all this stuff. And so they actually published in the newspaper this reward. They said that if you use the carbolic smoke ball, and after having used the carbolic smoke ball, you came down with influenza, they would give you a reward of £100.
What?
Yes. Right? Crazy.
Okay.
So it's a really famous case. Anyway.
So I'm assuming they got sued? I mean, did people say, hey, this is a bunch of BS or what?
Well, yeah. So anyway, this lady named Mrs. Carlisle. I'll call it Carlisle. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Carlisle or Carlisle. Anyway, Mrs. Carlisle came down with the flu after having used the carbolic smoke ball.
Right.
And she wanted her money. And so it went to court, and it was found that this was an enforceable contract.
It was, okay.
Yeah, it was an enforceable contract. And you're like, wait, contracts usually have two people, usually at least two parties. One party signs, the other party signs. There's a whole bunch of lawyer language that says, here and after and wherefore, and the parties agree. Well, that's not the case here, because what I just showed you guys was a newspaper ad, right?
Yeah.
So the theory here is that it's a one-sided contract. It's what's considered to be a contract that can be accepted by performance. And it was offered, the offer for the contract went out by general publication because the carbolic smoke ball company published it in a newspaper, and it was viewed by lots and lots of people. The people that viewed that ad could then accept the contract simply by performance. So all they had to do was go use the carbolic smoke ball. And if they then came down with the flu, well, they had a contract and they were entitled to the £100.
They had to pay up, I'm assuming?
Yeah, they did.
So are you trying to say that the poem in Forrest Fenn's book could be a type of open contract with whoever fulfills it? Meaning,
yes.
in the poem, it says, if you've been wise and found the blaze. And it says, if you are brave and in the wood, I give you title to the gold. So the person that meets those conditions and finds it, somehow there could be, in other words, Forrest is legally doing something.
Well, maybe.
Right.
I think it's a possibility. So I definitely think it's a possibility. So the answer in law school is always maybe.
Okay.
Things aren't definite. It's always maybe. But I think it's a definite possibility. So when we look at this offer by publication, Forrest has in no uncertain terms on multiple occasions gone out and he's been in his books, in the poem itself, in interviews, various articles, he has said, I hid a chest in the Rocky Mountains. And if you find it, you can have it. It's yours.
Right.
So that offer is out there. And that offer, I think, is out there to anyone who takes him up on it. Some people are going to say, Lisa, you're crazy. You can't have a contract like that because what is Forrest getting out of it? What is Forrest getting out of it? Well, Forrest told us why he did this, right? And he even says in the poem, he said, why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? The answers I already know. So why is it? Why is it that Forrest hid the chest?
Because he thought he was going to die from cancer originally.
Originally.
Okay.
And he wanted to get people out behind the texting machines and out into nature.
Yes, he did. And that is enough consideration to make that a contract, because those people would not otherwise be out in nature tromping around.
So one, we got a super chat from somebody you might know, Mr. Mark West. He says, contract law sounds interesting. That's Lisa's husband. But let me reverse it on you.
Mark West.
He has his own wine, everybody.
Mark West.
And he likes the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
The house, by the way.
Right. So let me reverse it on you and throw it and put it back to you this way and see what your opinion is. If tomorrow Forrest Fenn ends the treasure hunt, he says, this is crazy. People are going out in the snow. I'm just going to send Shiloh. It's over. Can a searcher say, you're violating your own contract? I'm going to take you to court because you told me if I follow this poem, and I've been on 700 boots on the ground, and you can't end it like that. Could it be reversed that way to where somebody tries to use his own contract poem against him?
Well, anybody can bring a lawsuit for anything.
Right. But I mean, do you think it could be successfully argued is the question.
Yeah.
But again, remember, no part of this conversation is legal advice.
Right. I understand.
But, would somebody try it? Yeah, I'm sure somebody would try it. Look at the people that have tried suing him already, right?
Right.
But generally, there are always nuances to things, but generally, when an offer is made, that offer can be retracted until the time that it has been, accepted. And yeah, there are a lot of people out there looking, but nobody has found it yet.
Right.
So could he retract it after somebody said, I found it, here it is?
Oh, right.
And Forrest goes, just kidding, changed my mind. No, I don't think he could do it at that point. Could he do it tomorrow if he wanted to end the chase? Yeah, I think he could.
I think he can do whatever he wants. It is his treasure hunt, but yeah.
Well, and you could ask, what if Forrest dies? Can he pass those rights on to someone, or is it pretty much like once he dies?
Well, that's interesting. So that probably brings up some other areas of law, right?
Yeah.
Such as what happens to his possessions and whatever. But let's talk about how long an offer can remain open. So if somebody makes an offer and they don't say, well, hey, you've got 10 days to get back with me and let me know, if you're going to do this. Or
the offer's good for 10 days. Yeah.
This is going to be open for, the next year or whatever. Well, he didn't say, did he? Or did he? He did, didn't he? How long did he say?
He said it might not be found for 900 years. I know that's a quote. Yeah.
Right. And he said, if you find it, put it under your bed for 30 days and think it through, or something like that. I don't want anyone to lose their mind. I said the word wrong, but something like that, like 30 days, but he didn't say contact me in 30 days. I remember the quote, something like, in 30 days, put it under your bed so you can think through. It'll be Pandora's box, that sort of thing.
Right. And I think that whoever finds it needs to get a lawyer or two. Not that I'm trying to drum up business for any of my brethren or sisterin or whatever that word
So when
be.
me and Kpro find it, do you know a lawyer that would be right up their alley?
I'm sure I can refer you to one.
So
I might not be that one, but I can refer you to one. But yeah, so he said that that the offer basically would be open for a long time. And I think that there's some interesting language in the poem where, because he says, I give you title to the gold. Also at the top of that same page, where if you look at like the page in the book where the map is, it says Forrest Fenn's treasure is hidden somewhere in the highlighted portion of Rocky Mountains in this map. In no uncertain terms has he ever, he has not in any way given up ownership of that chest. He hasn't, in my way of thinking, it's not lost.
So it does
waylaid.
belong to
not
him.
Abandoned.
Right. He knows where it is. Yeah.
Yeah. He said, and he always says, I could go back and get it anytime I want to.
And he said, when it's worth $5 million, I may go back and get it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So he has maintained his ownership and has maintained his ownership rights and like reestablished and reestablished and reestablished. I own that thing.
Right.
You know, it's out there and I'll give you title. So anyway, so I wanted to talk about that. And there are some other examples that I would kind of show you. Let me try this again.
So we did have a question real quick while you're doing that.
Okay.
I'm not sure I understand. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure why somebody wanted me. They specifically wanted me to ask you this. They said, do you think the term brave in the poem, if you are brave and in the wood, could refer to an American Indian, as in a Indian brave?
I think somebody has already asked Forrest that, haven't they?
I don't know if they have. I'm not familiar with it.
Am I crazy? I feel like that was already asked and answered, but I have to.
I don't.
Go back.
He didn't ask me. He's asking you. But what's that? Have you?
Some time ago, I thought that myself. I mean, I pondered that same thing, but I felt like that was already asked and answered.
But to me, the grammar doesn't make sense. If it said, if you are a brave and in the wood, like if you are an American Indian and in the wood, just saying if you are brave and in the wood, I don't think it fits to say. Because wouldn't it have to be capitalized, person, place, or noun? A brave, an Indian brave? I don't know. Yeah, right. Okay, what do you got?
I'm sorry.
So here's another. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Is it big enough?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So here is an example of a wanted poster. And so this is indicative of a typical Old West wanted poster. And so this too is a contract by publication. So they've made the offer out there, and anybody who reads this or hears about it can take them up on it. And they are entitled to the reward if they perform. So in this instance, Governor Lee Wallace of New Mexico said I would pay $500 reward to any person or person who will capture William Bonney, alias the Kid, and deliver him to any sheriff of New Mexico. So this is something that has been done, and I know that, you know, I'm sure everyone listening, you guys and everyone listening has seen millions of these posters, right? Now, some of them say alive or dead.
Right.
Right. That gets into an interesting area because there have been cases like that where rewards have been offered for things that would constitute breaking the law. So, and this is kind of where I wanted this to lead to. So, there was a case, and I'm gonna draw a blank on the name of the case right now. Ketchel is the name of one of the parties, K-E-T-C-H-E-L. And what the story was that there was a gentleman that was murdered, and there was a reward that was offered, and reportedly the reward was offered for the capture of the murderer of, you know, this friend of the guy. And then he was heard saying that, he'd accept it alive or dead. You could bring him in either way. He'd pay this $5,000 whether you brought him in alive or dead. Well, there ended up being a court case about this, actually. If you don't mind, I pull up my note. I can quote it a little bit better.
I just looked up Gibbons versus Proctor. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm not, but I'll look it up after we...
Yeah, it's another English contract law.
Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. It deals with whether or not a person who did not know of the offer can accept the offer if he completes the condition of the offer.
There you go.
Thank you
different. For bringing that up. And can he, Mike?
I don't know what the result of that case would be. I would say yes. He fulfilled it, even if he didn't know he was doing it. If it wasn't, I don't know.
So that's generally, if there's an offer out there, and if let's say that I give you an offer for returning, I lost my cell phone, and I put $1,000 reward out there if you return my cell phone. Why I would do that, I don't know. But anyway,
because all your Forrest Fenn notes are in it. That's why.
Exactly. That's why. So if I put that out there and somebody happens upon my phone and they find it and they return it to me, but they didn't know that there was a reward out there, they're not entitled to it.
You don't have to give it to them. Really?
No, they didn't perform. Typically, they didn't perform under that contract. They didn't see it.
Okay.
Go out there and act and then do it. So that was a great question.
So to apply that to the poem, real quick, Kpro, if somebody were to stumble across Forrest Fenn's treasure, let's just say somehow 900 years from now somebody accidentally finds it. Technically, they didn't perform the steps in the poem, and technically maybe somebody could say, well, you don't legally own that. He didn't give you title to the gold because you didn't outline what he said you need to do to get the title. That's interesting.
That maybe could happen, right?
Well, someone asked, since Forrest, and I did look up the page, and he said, considers it and calls it an abandoned treasure, does that change any of the legal premise that you're talking about? Because he has said he's abandoned it.
You there, Lisa, or to lock up? Oh, it might have locked up. Okay, we can hear you.
So I think what you said was that somebody asked in the chat. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back. Can
you guys listen?
Yeah, you were off there just for a hot second. You're back.
Okay.
I think you're frozen again.
Yeah, the video, it's freezing up a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll give you the sentence.
There you go. You're back.
Let me give you the sentence, Lisa. On the bottom of page 129, it says, I also wanted to include something personal with the treasure because maybe the lucky finder would want to know a little bit about the foolish person who abandoned such an opulent cache.
So he uses the term abandoned, yeah.
That's interesting. That is interesting, but based on all of the other things where Forrest says, I could go back and get it, and, I give you title. I think at least while he's alive, he's retaining ownership of it. That's what I think. Again, not legal advice. But you know how Forrest says only 85% of what he says in the book has to be true?
Yeah.
I would, maybe he's talking about way future state. Maybe that's what he's talking about.
Okay.
I would probably write that off because there are so many other instances where he tends to negate that. So, but that's a great question. Back to the thing about, remember where I talked about the case where somebody offered $5,000 reward if you brought somebody in alive or dead?
Yeah.
That case ended up going to trial, and it was the jury deliberated a bit, and it was ended up that I guess the court construed this. The court kind of came up with this construction that, well, maybe the guy said at one point alive or dead, but he was so incensed because his friend had been murdered that it was something he said in the heat of passion, and he didn't really mean to create a contract or to make an offer for this illegal thing. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I didn't know if internet
It's
was
when you
okay.
share your screen. Billy's right. Billy Price had the same issue. For some reason, that causes people to slow down. I don't know why.
Okay, so so in that instance, the court kind of went through they jumped through some hoops in order to construe that as well. He didn't really mean you had to kill him. What he was really saying was he wanted him to be caught and brought in, and therefore you should have to pay the reward. Because if it really was illegal, if the contract wanted you to do something illegal, then it would be unenforceable.
Right.
And so the court kind of jumped through some hoops. So let's talk about this.
Oh, we were talking about this earlier. This is perfect. Yeah.
Did you? Oh, gosh.
Trespassing, you mean? Trespassing? Private property? Is that where we're going?
Yes.
Oh, gotcha.
Let's talk about that. So
That makes sense.
If it's a contract, just saying, if it's a contract, and the contract would be unenforceable if it was a contract for you to do something illegal, does that change anyone's search area? Or does it change your search method? Or does it change what you think about whether or not the treasure might be buried or hidden? Because some places we know it's illegal to dig.
Right.
And forest,
certain types of land you can't dig on. Right.
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 And forest
That's interesting.
has been quoted as saying, "Don't dig where you're not supposed to dig."
Right. Follow the law. Yeah.
Right. He said, it was one of his interviews. He said to the guy, he goes, "Well, did you get arrested?" He goes, "Are you going to jail?" And Forrest
He
goes,
never said don't break the law. He has only said don't dig, which someone corrected me earlier because I said exactly what you're saying.
He said, "Don't dig where you're not supposed to dig."
But I like that.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So if it's a contract, if it is a contract, or if you want to rely on that in court when you're trying to fight the government for those
claim
treasure,
ownership,
right?
Using
if
the
that's
poem.
going to be your argument,
Right.
Maybe, just maybe, we should put that in the back of our head and think, hey, Forrest wouldn't put a contract out there that would entice me to break the law, that I had to break the law in order to fulfill, because that wouldn't be able to be upheld.
That's the question from earlier. We didn't know the answer. So this, like, if we
I like it.
Couldn't it go as unenforceable or like we don't have legal title to it then, and maybe the government would get it or someone else?
Right. Yeah. Well, what if there were multiple ways you could go about getting at, like, let's say you solved it and you knew exactly where it was, because remember, if you know where it is, you can go straight to it, right, and retrieve it. So let's say that there were multiple ways you could go about getting it. One would be to trespass. Two would be to, I don't know, get a permit, lease the property, rent the property, I don't know, various different ways, right? And you do it the illegal way. What happens?
Right.
So I just think
it's interesting. I like it. I mean, so
I think when we're thinking about our search areas and where it actually could have been hidden, I think that we should keep in mind that, so if people kind of agree with what I'm saying, that this is an offer by publication, it's an offer for a reward, similar to printing it in a newspaper. He says, "Hear me all," right? Hear me all. So is that not publication?
Right. And listen good. Yeah.
Audience. Right.
So,
Hear me all.
So two things. One, we had two super chats, and I don't know Kpro, but William did one. Thank you, William. But he says Forrest always referred to the poem as a map and not a contract. Does contract and law apply in those terms? But, William, and maybe you have the same answer, why can't it be both? Why can't stanzas 2, 3, and 4 be the map, but stanzas 1, 5, and 6 are the contract? Why can't there be both embedded in the poem?
Right.
And then we also had a super chat from Ronnie Lee, who says, just blended up fresh tangerine and blood orange margaritas. Cheers. Well, cheers. Back to you.
Cheers.
You see that crazy
Oh,
guy?
and Mark West just did a super chat for $20 and says, this seems like an interesting topic for the searchers. Thanks for including in the marathon.
Thank you, Mark West. I know I'm way over my time. Can I give you guys one more case?
Yeah.
Person that's coming up next has said he'll go a little short because I think the room is just loving.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So if
And
you
then
wanna
I got
go-
a comment too. Yeah, go
The
ahead.
loving law? What? It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Because you just narrowed down on some search areas, I think, that people
Maybe.
might have been on the fence on. Get it, fence? Don't trespass? Thank you.
Ha.
I'm here all night.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about this case. This case is from 1952, and it's went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And it was a case called Robertson versus the United States. You guys can look it up if you want. Robertson versus United States.
Mhm.
The number, if you were going to Google it, you Google 343 U.S. 711.
Okay.
And so this case was this philanthropic donor put together this contest, and he said that he would offer 3 prizes of, the top prize was 25,000. I think below that it was maybe like 7,000 and then 5,000 for the best symphonic composition that was turned in. And the $25,000 was the top prize. And so this guy Robinson, he wrote this symphony, and he submitted it to the contest, and he won $25,000. And this was back in I think it was, when did he win? 1946 or 1947? It's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And he had written the symphony over a period of 3 years. Like it was like 36, 37, and 38 or something. He wrote this, and so he got this $25,000, and then he didn't want to pay tax on it. He said it was a gift.
He won a contest, correct? Is that
He won a
kind of?
contest, yeah.
But he was trying to say it's a gift. I don't have to pay tax.
Right. He said it was a gift. He didn't have to pay tax. And the IRS response and the court, so this is the U.S. Supreme Court, said, and I'm going to quote, in the legal sense, payment of a prize to a winner of a contest is, ready for this, the discharge of a contractual obligation. The acceptance by the contestants of the offer tendered by the sponsor of the contest creates an enforceable contract.
Oh, interesting.
So, for all the people that are worried about gift tax, my thinking is, the IRS would come after their piece, but it would be more like a contest. I think it would be construed more like that case. And that case has held up. That case was decided in 1952, and it's held up ever since.
So you're saying you think Forrest Fenn's poem is a contest? I guess it is. I mean, he says, follow these clues, figure it out, go find it. That's a contest. Who can get there first?
Sure. I mean, isn't it a contest? We're all competing against each other. We're friendly
It
competition.
is. I mean, it is a competition. But yeah, there are rules laid out in the poem is what you have to do. Those are the quote-unquote rules of the contest.
This came up when Sassy won the David Blaine, whether it was a contest or whether it was a sweepstakes versus whether it was something else. And
Giveaway.
they categorized it in the way that she got taxed a lot, and she's like, I hope this one is the one that doesn't get or taxed as much or whatever. So this came up, and it's like it's chance versus skill. I mean, there's
Yeah.
and all of that.
Kpro, I love you. So remember, I'm a corporate lawyer here in Las Vegas. So
Right.
I work for a
You
games
said
company.
it is not being questioned anymore. This is a contest. I've spent too many hours, and I'm a lame.
You just started naming off the elements of gambling. It's prize, chance, and consideration.
Right. Right.
Speaking of, there was another really famous case. All us lawyers that came out of UNLV, we know this case. It was a hacienda. It was the hacienda here in Las Vegas many years ago had publicized there was a golf tournament, and they had offered a $5,000 prize for a hole-in-one, and somebody made the hole-in-one. And I don't know, it was the insurance company or the house or whoever. They didn't want to pay up. Anyway, it was an enforceable contract.
Is that right?
It was a similar type of a thing, right? If you do this, you can have that.
Right,
And,
right.
I think that's what Forrest is saying. Forrest is saying, if you go out in the woods and you solve my poem,
right,
you can have the treasure. It's yours. And so the neat thing about that is there, as you look at all of these regulations and laws that say, what happens when you find something that belongs to somebody else? What if the title transfers when you find it? What if, based on the poem, it's yours when you find it? And you can go, you know what? This is mine. I found this. This is mine.
So this is asked a couple times in the chat. So he made the comment during one of our interview clips. I don't know if you've seen it. When I asked about ownership, I don't even remember what I asked, so I probably got it wrong. But he said something like, and he said it in a couple different interviews, what if you go and rent a cabin, and then what do you own for that day? Do you own ownership of the
barbecue?
Fire, the barbecue pit? Do you own, what do you own? What do you actually own?
Right.
And when you rent something,
you don't own anything. But then Carter brought on some stuff on the last marathon about S corps, because he also brought out S corps. Do you know those quotes, and do you have any thoughts on that?
I actually don't know those quotes, and I would love if you would share a link to those quotes, because I would love to hear them. And I'm not going to get into S corps because I'm going to leave that up to Carter. But my thinking is that, look, obviously, the law is different in every state, and again, I'm not going to give any advice, nor am I admitted in any of the 4 states in which the chest is, located in. So I couldn't give advice there even if I wanted to.
Lisa said I can. No.
But that's going to be the new hashtag. Lisa said.
Right.
Yeah. No. Lisa said, not your lawyer.
Yeah.
So my thinking is, again, this is just totally, off the cuff, unprepared. But if something was actually had been buried, if it was buried, it would belong to the owner of that land. I think if it was buried, if something was just placed on the surface of that land, and the owner of that land did not know it was there, and had never, it had never obviously exhibited any dominion or control over that because they didn't know it was there. I think that those would be 2 different things. I think if it was buried, it's you're gonna fight whoever owns that land. But I think if it's just placed,
so you're making the case for it not being buried.
Yeah.
So MEH says, what if the finder finds it while Forrest is alive, gives it back to Forrest, no strings attached, and Forrest says, here, I'm giving it to you? Does that bypass any ownership issues?
I would say that then you've defeated the purpose of the contract, which I think Forrest, I think he expressly tried to
set up
that situation. Yeah.
Well, that's what I think was Michael's point, because follow up, he said the finder in no way accepts the contract interpretation and does take it and gives it to Forrest. And then Forrest says, here, I'm going to give it right back to you. So Forrest has transferred the ownership that way.
I suspect that Forrest wouldn't accept it. I suspect he would not accept it. I suspect he would take his silver bracelet back.
Right.
Which again, further to the reward theory, a contract, offered by publication for a reward, perhaps he's, further cemented that concept by saying, "Hey, yeah, I'd really like my bracelet back." So
Okay, so
you get it,
two other
keep
questions
everything
that
else.
have come up. Forrest went and saw an attorney twice, once
Yeah.
before and then once in 2013-14 timeframe. Do you have any guesses of why? Like I asked him the question, if you've seen an attorney twice, did land ownership change? Did something like change? And of course he didn't answer. He said he wouldn't answer, which I mean, that would give away too much of a hint, whatever. But I just thought, what could have been, if he spent so much time up front thinking it through, why would he need to go see an attorney again in like after the trust is already in its place?
That is really interesting. And, you know, I am going to go look in my search area and see what has changed there. When was it? 2013 that he saw a lawyer again?
Supposedly he did it before. He didn't say. And
He
then
didn't say when, right?
Went up on one of the other tubers, and they said I think, and Cynthia, if you're in here, you could probably say it was after the treasure chest was in its place. And I want to say he made the statement around 2013. I went and saw an attorney again, and it was within that week that both Cynthia and Dale heard it. Or
interesting. I would be really interested to see what additional guidance or clues Forrest gave that year.
That's a good
because if maybe if that's when hey, I left my silver bracelet in there and I'd really like that back.
Right.
If that's when that came out, I would say maybe there had been some type of change in interpretation of the law. It could have been, obviously it could have been a change in ownership of the land. There's a lot of area of New Mexico, which is my search area, that the land ownership is disputed and has been disputed for hundreds of years.
I would say.
And,
I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
And, you know, the federal government has acquired, I believe they've acquired some additional tracts of land or acquired the, I guess they take care of additional tracts of land now. So there could have been some kind of a change.
Yeah,
I would be really curious.
Mike Davis over on Harry's put up an article maybe 2 or 3 years, maybe 2 years ago. That was his, I don't know if it was his area, but he's the one that actually sparked me to this idea, because it was like 100,000 acres was moving from BLM to, and I don't remember it enough, like national parks or national or state,
right?
Or it was state park something, it was transitioning. And he said, what if Forrest didn't think of this? Like there was in the next 100 years, there's a transition, or 900 years, there's a transition, and he's based it on a certain type of land, which I thought.
Or
I think we need to look and see what guidance came out from Forrest that year.
If Cynthia or Dale can narrow it down to when they heard this, I would say what was in the news as far as a ownership case. You remember when the California couple found the silver coins inside the thing on their property? Was there something in the news that made Forrest go, oh, I need to go talk to this lawyer again and ask a new question that I didn't think of before
There's a lot of people
regarding lost property, found property, etc.?
Some people believe the only reason he can't say that there's hints in the other two books is because his family profits off of it. TTOTC, it doesn't. So if you have something that you're profiting off of, he doesn't profit off the poem. He doesn't profit off TTOTC because it's all donated to charity. But the other books, he has said he's never talked about hints or clues. And some people believe it's something legal. I don't know enough. Here's another question though. But what if it's found on the waterways? No one owns the waterways because I guess it's the
waterway, not water itself, because we know it's not water.
Riparian law. Yeah. Taking me way back to school. Yeah, riparian law is not my.
Come on, crack the books open. Let's go.
They say that no one owns it, so it's like kind of fair game to everybody. But he says it's not underwater, so then that kind of negates that. But these are all, everyone wants to know every single thing you learned in law school, please.
Oh my God, right. Because, because lawyers, like doctors, we know everything. Because like if you have a friend that's a doctor, you can ask them anything from like something about brain surgery to like a heart problem to like an ingrown toenail. I mean, lawyers are the same way, right?
And Richard, I sent you the link if you want to come in. I know we went way over, and thank you. Richard
so
reached out to Kpro and said it was okay to go over. So I sent you the link if you want to come on. But I have maybe this will blow everybody's mind. After things Forrest has said, which is he spent a bunch of money with lawyers. The first time, we don't know when. When you have an idea to do something, when do you talk to a lawyer? Before you actually do it, right? Wouldn't that make the most sense? And then in that one interview where the guy was asking him about different ownership of land, Forrest said, but what if there is no legal issue? That's his exact words to him. He goes, yeah, but what if there is no legal issue? So what if the 15 years to write the poem was not about the clues? The 15 years to write the poem was to word stanza 1, 5, and 6 so that contractually it could stand up in court. What if the lawyer said, for you to do this, you need to make this point, that point? And then Forrest spent 15 years trying to figure out how to put that into a poem so that it would make sense for a lawyer or a judge or whoever that contract would go before.
Notwithstanding the type of land, because the type of land can change over 1,000 years.
I think the clues were easy. He said, I always knew where I wanted to hide it. I think the clues were the easy part. I think it was these other stanzas is what took him 15 years to write. What do you guys think?
I mean, the type of land certainly could change, but I mean, the offer is out there and he says, if you XYZ, if you do this, I give you title. So at that point, isn't it yours? Isn't it mine? Then if I go find it, it's mine. I'm not taking something that belongs to that person or that belongs to the government. I wouldn't interpret it that way. But
Detroit Twin says he said that to Barry Peterson.
An argument to be made.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, instead of saying I, Forrest Fenn, of sound mind and body, he says, why is it that I must go and leave my trove to all to seek? He used the legal language. He just twisted it a little bit, I think.
He did.
Right? I mean, that totally makes sense.
So I believe right now, if I found the treasure chest and I went to go give him the bracelet, he would tell me, or it's in the treasure chest, but he would tell me how to make sure I maneuver this. I don't think he's hiring lawyers for the finder, but I think he's going to make sure that you're okay. If he passes, it has to be in the treasure chest then, because if it's 900 years before we see it, how can we, so it has to be maybe the unknown item in the treasure.